August 12, 1944, south of Falaise, Normandy. The morning fog clung low to the fields, heavy with the smell of oil and gunpowder. Somewhere beyond the hedgerows, artillery thumped, steady, rhythmic, and endless. The German front was collapsing. Inside a battered Panzer IV, Sergeant Otto Keller wiped grime from the periscope and cursed under his breath. "Fuel's almost gone," he muttered. Beside him, the gunner, Franz Muller, gave a hollow laugh. "Good, maybe we'll stop fighting before the world ends." Their tank, number 113 of the 2nd Panzer Division, had been retreating for days, dodging Jabos, Allied fighter bombers that owned the sky. The men were exhausted, hungry, and outnumbered 100 to 1. Still, orders were orders. Somewhere up the road, an Allied convoy, British, maybe Canadian, was said to be advancing unescorted toward the front. Keller's platoon had one last job: intercept and delay it. At 0600 hours, the tank rumbled to life, tracks grinding through wet earth. The fog was their only ally now. "Load a P," Keller said. "If it's trucks, we scare them. If it's Shermans, we burn them." They took position behind a low stone wall near a bend in the road. Through the mist, the first sounds came: engines, clanking metal, the faint rhythm of soldiers singing. Then, like ghosts in the gray light, the shapes appeared: 10 Allied trucks, 2 jeeps, and a half-track, all loaded with crates and fuel drums. No escort, no tanks. Muller's eyes widened. What kind of fools send that much supply unguarded? Keller didn't answer. "Range, 300 meters, fire." The first shell hit the lead truck squarely. It exploded in a storm of fire and flying metal. Men dove for cover, shouting. Another round tore through the rear vehicle, blocking the road. Within seconds, the convoy was trapped, smoke rising, bullets pinging off the Panzer's armor. "Advance!" Keller barked. The Panzer rolled forward, crushing debris under its tracks. German infantry from the hedgerows poured in, rounding up survivors. The firefight ended in minutes. As the smoke cleared, Keller climbed down, pistol drawn. Allied soldiers, mostly young Americans, stood with hands raised, faces pale but defiant. Behind them, the cargo spilled open, crates marked U.S. Army Quartermaster Corps and made in Detroit. Keller kicked one open. Inside were spare engine parts, rolls of wiring, field radios, and something else. He stared, speechless. Brand new truck engines, still wrapped in wax paper. Dozens of them. And boxes of canned food stacked higher than a man. Corned beef, chocolate, coffee. His driver, Hans Weber, whistled. Mein Gott. They'd built an army out of food. Muller opened another crate. Inside was a portable generator, gleaming. Another held neatly packed medical supplies: morphine, bandages, penicillin. Weber picked up a tin of coffee and shook his head. "We're fighting men who drink better than our officers eat." Keller didn't speak. He just looked at the road ahead. Endless trucks, supplies, fuel, all built, shipped, and delivered faster than his own army could even retreat. The realization came slow, like frost creeping over glass. Germany wasn't losing because her men were weak. She was losing because the world had outbuilt her. And this convoy, captured, destroyed, meaningless in the scale of things, proved it beyond all doubt. He holstered his pistol and muttered, "We can't win this." Not against this. No one disagreed. August 12, 1944. Afternoon, outskirts of Trun, Normandy. The smoke had thinned by noon. The Panzer sat half-camouflaged beside the smoldering wrecks, its armor streaked with soot and dried mud. Keller stood on the road, watching the prisoners sit in a huddled line, guarded by 2 of his men. He couldn't stop staring at the trucks, or what was left of them. Franz Muller was rummaging through a half-burned crate, grinning like a child. "Look at this, Otto. Wristwatches. Dozens of them. They even ship time across the ocean." He tossed one to Keller. It gleamed silver in the sun, ticking steadily, perfectly. A machine that never faltered. Wristwatches, chocolates, radios, spare tires. Franz's grin faded. It's like they've got factories bigger than our whole country. Keller didn't answer. His eyes were on the insignia stamped on every crate. U.S. Army Ordnance Department, Buffalo, New York. He whispered the words slowly, almost reverently. They fight a world away, and still their supplies come like rivers. In the nearby field, a British truck driver sat cross-legged in the dirt. His face streaked with grime, but his voice steady. "You think this matters, Sergeant?" he said in accented German. "That you've stopped something?" Keller frowned. "You've lost your convoy, your supplies, your men." "I'd say it matters." The Brit laughed, a dry, tired sound. "That's just one convoy. There'll be 10 more behind it before dusk." Keller looked at him, unsure whether it was bravado or truth. But when he turned back to the horizon, he saw it. Faint trails of dust far to the west. More vehicles. More reinforcements. The line of movement that never ended. It wasn't an army. It was an engine. Back at the Panzer, the driver Hans Weber sat on the hull, eating from a stolen tin of American rations. He had heated it on the tank's exhaust pipe, beans and bacon in tomato sauce. The smell was rich, smoky, almost decadent. "Franz," he said between bites, "remember when we used to get horse meat at the front? Look at this. They feed this to drivers." Franz took a bite, chewing in silence. "We used to think we were the best-fed army in Europe." Keller lit a cigarette and stared at the wreckage. They had won the skirmish, but he felt nothing. He'd been in the Wehrmacht since Poland, fought through France, Russia, and North Africa. He'd seen glory, fear, hunger, and comrades buried in snow. But this moment, standing amid the wreckage of an enemy convoy that seemed inexhaustible, this was the first time he truly understood defeat, not the battlefield kind. The kind that came from math, from numbers too vast to comprehend. He ground his cigarette under his boot. "We're not fighting soldiers anymore," he said softly. "We're fighting machines that build soldiers." That night, as the sun bled into the horizon, the platoon gathered around a makeshift fire. Someone found a gramophone among the supplies, small, portable, still working. They turned the crank and it began to play a swing record, the kind banned back home. An American voice crackled through the static. "We'll meet again. Don't know where. Don't know when." For a moment, nobody moved. The melody drifted through the field, strange, almost tender, a song from the other side of the war. Hans muttered, "It's beautiful." Keller nodded. "It's civilization." "And we burned it." They sat there in silence, surrounded by ruins, listening to the music of their enemies, and realizing that the future belonged to those who could play songs like that and build 1,000 trucks overnight. By dawn, new orders came through the radio: retreat east. The Allies had broken through. Keller climbed back into his Panzer, the engine coughing weakly. As they rolled away, he looked once more at the burning convoy behind them. It wasn't victory. It was evidence, proof that the war Germany had begun was now far beyond its ability to win. He said nothing. But in his mind, one thought echoed louder than the engine itself. If this is what one convoy looks like, how can we fight the whole world? August 14th, 1944, east of Argentan, Normandy. Rain had begun to fall, turning the fields into rivers of mud. The Panzer groaned and slipped as it climbed a ridge overlooking the valley below. Keller leaned out of the turret, rain slashing across his face. Through his binoculars he saw it, the retreating German column stretching for miles. Headlights dimmed, engines sputtering. It wasn't an army anymore, it was a migration. Behind them, artillery thundered, not German, but British. To the west, American armor advanced like a steel tide, cutting off every road. The Falaise pocket was closing, and the 2nd Panzer Division was about to be trapped. Inside the tank, Franz Muller muttered, "If command says we're withdrawing to the Seine, they're mad. There's no way out." Hans, the driver, gave a bitter laugh. "Command says a lot of things. None of them true anymore." The radio crackled static, then a voice shouting through the noise, "All units, maintain order. Reinforcements are coming from Paris." Keller turned off the radio. "Reinforcements," he said. "What reinforcements?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out the American watch Franz had found 2 days earlier. The second hand ticked perfectly, smooth, effortless. It hadn't stopped once since he'd set it. "Our factories are rubble," he said quietly. "Their watches still keep time." At the bottom of the ridge, the convoy of refugees and retreating troops stretched across the horizon. Ox carts, broken trucks, wounded soldiers limping beside them. Somewhere in that chaos, the last fuel truck for his unit was burning, its black smoke curling into the rain. Keller climbed down, slamming the hatch shut. "That's it. We're out." The Panzer's engine sputtered, then died. The crew sat in silence, the rain hammering against the steel. Franz looked at him. "So what now?" Keller lit a cigarette with trembling hands. "Now, we walk east." They abandoned the tank, their last machine, their last piece of armor. It sat there in the mud, engine dead, gun aimed toward nothing. As they started down the slope, Keller paused and turned back. The Panzer looked ancient now, like a relic from a world that no longer existed. He thought of the convoy again, the trucks, the engines, the food, the radios, the endless supplies that had rolled through Normandy like veins of an industrial god. That's when it struck him. The Allies weren't winning by courage or tactics. They were winning by numbers that never ran out. And Germany, for all its discipline and willpower, was bleeding from the inside, starving, burning, disintegrating. By afternoon, the 4 men reached a small village reduced to rubble. The church steeple was shattered, its bell lying broken in the street. Civilians hid in cellars, their faces gray with fear. A farmer, old, hunched, desperate, offered them a loaf of bread. "Take it," he said in a trembling voice. "Just go." Keller took the bread but shook his head. "We're not conquerors anymore, old man. We're ghosts." They sat under a collapsed awning, eating in silence. The bread was stale, but it tasted real, maybe the last real thing they'd have in this war. Franz broke the silence. "Do you think Berlin still believes we can win?" Keller looked at the horizon, where flashes of artillery danced like lightning. "Berlin still believes in ghosts and miracles. Out here, we believe in engines and factories, and we don't have enough of either." That night, the men slept in the ruins of a barn. Rain seeped through the roof. In the distance, they could hear engines, hundreds of them, Allied convoys moving east, relentless, organized, unstoppable. Keller listened, eyes open in the dark. Each passing truck sounded like a drumbeat of inevitability. He whispered to himself, "They can afford to build forever. We can't even rebuild what's lost." The others were already asleep. Outside, lightning flashed over the valley, illuminating the burned-out Panzer on the ridge, a monument to a lost cause. The rain fell harder, washing the soot from its armor, leaving behind only mud and silence. In the morning, Keller woke to distant explosions, Allied bombers hammering the retreat routes. Smoke filled the air again, but this time he didn't flinch. He picked up his rifle, slung it over his shoulder, and started walking east with his crew. No orders, no radio. No hope, just 4 men moving through a dying empire. And behind them, the sound of engines, the same mechanical hum that had haunted their dreams, rolled across the plains. Unstoppable, eternal. April 1945, near Hanover, Germany. Otto Keller was no longer a soldier, just a man in a tattered uniform, walking through the ruins of his homeland. The war was over, though no one had said it yet. The cities were rubble, the factories gone, and the roads filled with refugees. Allied convoys now rolled through German soil, efficient, endless, mechanical, just as he'd seen that day in Normandy. He stopped beside the road and watched as American trucks passed, their white stars shining through the dust. The same crates, the same smell of fuel, the same sound of engines. Franz, still with him after all these months, said quietly, "We used to laugh at how much they had. Now I wonder how they ever ran out of anything." Keller nodded. "They didn't." He reached into his pocket and pulled out that same wristwatch, still ticking, still perfect. The face was scratched, the strap worn, but the time had never faltered. He looked at it, then at the convoy, then at the ruins of a factory beyond. "We lost," he said softly. Long before we knew it, that evening, they found an abandoned farmhouse to sleep in. The world outside was silent, no artillery, no engines, just wind moving through the trees. Keller sat by the window, the watch in his palm. Its ticking sounded like a heartbeat, steady and alive. He whispered, not to anyone in particular. "They built things that lasted. We built things that burned." The war had ended, but for men like him, the real ending had happened months earlier. On that road in Normandy, when they opened the crates of a single Allied convoy and saw the future inside. A future made not of soldiers, but of industry, endurance, and time. And in that quiet farmhouse, as the night deepened over a broken Germany, Sergeant Otto Keller finally understood the cruelest truth of war. The side with the better machines always writes the peace.